perfectly to a first place finish there. Also a top 8 at the Oceania International Championships in 2020, one of the last IRL tournaments that took place, so has had a ton of success in the Pokemon trading card game as recently as possible, and I'm excited to see this game, Kyle. Let's go ahead and get down to the table and see which of these players, as we take a look at their cards quickly, both playing that Galarian Moltres V, like we mentioned, kind of a counter card to the Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX decks that are expected to be pretty popular in this event. It's going to be interesting to see how they play a factor in this matchup where you're not obviously hitting for that dark type weakness.
Yeah, it's a great Pokemon just because the ability powers itself up. You can use it in just about any matchup, but I think the focus is going to be on these two different Pokemon VMAX. Victini VMAX, Gustavo going a bit against the grain here in this standard format, and Natalie going with the tried and true Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, which has won the last 2 Players' Cup.
Yeah, solid choice for sure. And now we'll go ahead and get down to the table and see how this game is going to play out. Victini VMAX, really a card that was pretty popular early on in that Battle Styles format, but kind of seemed to fall off a little bit towards the end of the format. Gustavo's played a ton of Welder decks, I know, in online events leading up to this. I know he's played a good bit of things like Cinderace VMAX, a good bit of Victini, so it kind of makes sense, actually, that he would roll up with a Fire-type deck for this tournament.
Yeah, hard to argue with Welder. It's been one of the strongest supporter cards ever since it's come out. And whenever you can just find a Pokemon that can use fire energy effectively, hey, Welder is the right supporter for your deck. But I am interested to see what exactly is going to go on with Natalie's deck here. We have seen Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX with Inteleon. That's the deck that won Players' Cup 4. But adding this new twist of the Galarian Moltres V, is it going to make the deck clunky, or is it maybe a new dimension that makes this deck even more powerful?
I mean, I think it's one of the ideas to try to counteract the expected meta, right? Obviously, Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, extremely popular, and Rapid Strike Urshifu is weak to Psychic, being weak to the Shadow Riders that are ever so popular. So by playing Galarian Moltres, the idea here is that you have the option to hit for weakness in that relevant matchup, as Natalie has a pretty solid hand getting started here. Dire Flame Wings right away gonna accelerate an extra energy into play, and a Rapid Strike energy getting attached to that Rapid Strike Urshifu on the bench, and Sobble ready to evolve into Drizzile on the next turn.
Yeah, that was a perfect first turn. You couldn't ask for much better. I mean, maybe you could get an extra Sobble down, but you got an energy in the discard, you got an energy attachment onto Rapid Strike Urshifu V. You went first, which is huge in these VMAX matchups. I think Victini is one of those Pokemon that is much better when you're going first. You get a chance to attack with Victini VMAX and knock out a Pokemon V before it can evolve. So right now, if you're looking at this, I think you got to say Natalie is pretty heavily favored in this game.
Definitely a good spot here on turn 1. Gustavo playing a quick ball, eyeing up Victini V right away. Going second here, actually kind of a downfall, I feel like, for Victini VMAX. You really want to try to be aggressive with that max victory. Try to target down Pokemon V on your opponent's side before they have an opportunity to evolve into VMAXs, which are much harder to KO.
Absolutely. We do see Professor's research from Gustavo opting to go for that instead of the Welder for just 1 energy. Trying to dig for some more options here. And yeah, this is a difficult spot. Also, kind of an awkward hand off of that Professor's research. There's no supporter card for next turn. No energy card, but there is the Viridian Forest. But Viridian Forest, kind of a double-edged sword when you're playing against another Galarian Moltres V deck. You kind of give them fuel as well.
Viridian's always been a really solid card, but I've loved that it's really just increased in play so much over the last few weeks, ever since Chilling Reign came out. Just Galarian Moltres being as solid as it is has boosted the playability of that card so much. We are going to see Viridian does grab that Fire-type energy. Dire Flame Wings will accelerate 1 more to the active, and both players overall, I would say, having pretty solid turn 1s, about as good as you could ask for.
Yeah, now one awkward thing about Victini V, it does get knocked out by Galarian Moltres V. So Gustavo in a bit of a vulnerable position. So we do see Natalie does draw a Darkness energy for the turn. If she wants to get really aggressive, she could Shady Dealings for a Boss's Orders and go for the knockout. Take away Gustavo's only Victini V in play.
Also even has the escape rope here in hand, and since Gustavo has no other benched Pokemon, that Victini is going to be forced into the active spot here. So as long as Natalie can find either a switching card or an air balloon, or worst case scenario, just hard retreat the energy off of the Rapid Strike Urshifu, with that Viridian Forest in play, she's actually already got the guaranteed knockout here on this Victini.
Yeah, this would be a devastating turn. Gustavo could have benched that Galarian Zapdos V, but probably thinking, that's not going to be a very important card in this matchup. And how often do you expect the turn to escape rope to bring up your Pokemon? So it's going to be a tough spot if Natalie's able to pull this off. And no, we actually just see she's going to Professor's Research away the escape rope, valuing attacking into this active Pokemon instead.
Yeah, this is actually interesting, and it does make sense. Attacking into a Galarian Moltres first means that it's more difficult for your opponent to be able to attack because Aura Burn does hurt yourself, dealing 30 damage in recoil, so that it makes it so now if Gustavo wants to attack with his Galarian Moltres, it'll just knock itself out. So getting this first hit off is pretty solid, as we are going to go over to Gustavo's side, who does top deck a Darkness Energy pretty solid and will be able to actually just even retreat into this Victini VMAX if he wants to and take a max victory knockout.
Yep, that's the awkward position you put yourself in now. That Victini VMAX is ready to go. It does deal with regular Pokemon V very effectively. Just 2 energy basically knocks out every Pokemon V. As you mentioned before, VMAX is a little bit tougher for Victini VMAX to chew through, but yeah, this is set up for Victini VMAX to get this knockout. The nice thing for Natalie is this does set up, that Moltres to get knocked out later, maybe just by Gmax Rapid Flow, or maybe some hits from the Inteleon. But yeah, here we see Victini VMAX doing what it does, and I think importantly, Gustavo not benching any additional Pokemon here. A lot of players would have seen this as an opportunity to draw more cards with Dedenne GX, but Gustavo recognizing, no, I'm not going to give my opponent more targets for that Gmax Rapid Flow.
Yeah, I would have definitely been tempted to put that Dedenne GX in play, but up against Rapid Strike Urshifu, it is a big time liability. A pretty easy 2 cards, as we see Natalie is able to draw into that quick shooting Inteleon, so that Galarian Moltres is now only 1 turn away from being KO'd in between turns. Like, being able to pick up knockouts without attacking is extremely strong when you can make it happen.
Yep, and something we should probably mention is that Victini VMAX is weak to water. So we could actually see at some point a Rapid Strike energy go on to Inteleon and attack into it for weakness as well. So that is another one of the downsides of Victini VMAX. Now everybody's playing this Inteleon. Everybody's got water Pokemon.
Yeah, that's pretty. I hadn't even really considered that option yet, but that is a pretty solid one for Gustavo to consider. As Gustavo here, kind of interestingly enough, just not even having to worry about Welder. Victini VMAX is a very efficient attacker, only needing 2 energy, so it's nice to have the option to Welder, maybe if you miss an attachment on a turn, something like that. But Gustavo really not even valuing the card nearly as highly as you would have thought in a Fire-type deck, only playing 3 copies of Welder and just relying on kind of that turn-by-turn energy attachment, as we see. Eyeing up using the Viridian here, but looks like it will just be a max victory, 220 damage, setting up that Urshifu to be KO'd later on.
Yeah, you can see how Natalie is just kind of mapping out prize cards here. If you take down the Victini VMAX and then that Galarian Moltres that's already heavily damaged, that's 5 prize cards, and that means just 1 more knockout after that will be the game. And with Gmax Rapid Flow, we've seen how easily you can set up multiple knockouts at once. It might be challenging to close this out if Gustavo is able to get another Victini VMAX into play next turn. But we'll see what Natalie has planned.
Eyeing up a quick ball here. Definitely establishing a second Rapid Strike Urshifu feels pretty solid whenever this one is pretty heavily damaged, but also Moltres a solid option, especially since you can go ahead and get that acceleration with Dire Flame Wings. And the energy going on to the active, meaning, Kyle, we could see a Gmax Rapid Flow this turn to target down maybe both of those Victinis.
Yeah, I think it's a smart play. You see, it's going to be a little short of a knockout on the active this turn, but what's going to happen is there's going to be 2 Pokemon that have 20 HP remaining after this G-Max Rapid Flip. So next turn, if Natalie is able to get a second Inteleon out, we can see 2 abilities being used to finish off those 2 Pokemon, and then potentially Galarian Moltres gets the finishing blow on this last Victini VMAX. It's just all about whether Gustavo can play around this and whether Natalie can get the resources to pull it off. But you can see the game plan in action. It's brilliant.
Yeah, things have set up very nicely here for Natalie. Gustavo going to do everything in his power to try to get around this play, and targeting down that Galarian Moltres seems like a great option. Max Victory easily able to pick up this one-hit KO. We see Welder getting discarded right away. Natalie will be able to still get the knockouts on these 2 Pokemon with 20 HP remaining with that Evolution Incense already in hand. The second Inteleon is already guaranteed, but being able to knock out this last Victini VMAX on the bench could be pretty difficult.
Yeah, so Gustavo, recognizing what his opponent is trying to do, plays around that, and now has this ruined Natalie's plans, or does she have something else in mind? We do see an interesting card in her hand, that Cobalion GX. We could see the Iron Rule GX, which prevents your opponent from attacking on their next turn, and that could be the time she needs to just use those abilities with Inteleon, rack up enough damage, and take this game.
Could be the case. We do see Evolution Incense does grab that second Inteleon here. I think not quite able to pick up the KO on that Victini VMAX on the bench. Obviously, you can clear the other 2 Pokemon out of play. So you could think about that waterfall, coming out and targeting down that Victini and knocking it out, but it's just short of picking up that KO. So Natalie here going to take time and really banking on the fact that Gustavo is not going to be able to play any healing cards here and won't be able to play anything here thanks to that Iron Rule GX.
Yep, you can still play cards, but you cannot attack. It's kind of similar to that Gengar and Mimikyu GX, but a little bit different. No matter what you do, you know that Gustavo cannot take a knockout this turn. And this is a card we haven't seen a lot of in the standard format. That Iron Rule GX is combining beautifully with the Inteleon, letting you get kind of a free turn to rack up extra damage. And this could be the difference in this first game.
It seems like it could be the difference maker indeed. Natalie's hand, not the best, but will be able to take 5 prize cards without even playing anything out of the hand. So as long as that happens and those 5 prize cards are pretty good, it could award Natalie with lots of different options to try to close the game out here. Gustavo trying to survey all the options, looking through the deck, seeing what exactly do I have available to me. Can't attack here, but can attach some energy, maybe try to get another Pokemon in play to send up so that way the Victini VMAX doesn't get forced active. Definitely something I think he should be considering.
Yeah, still a bit of an awkward hand for Natalie. I think she's going to be relying a lot on the prize cards to get kind of those last resources to get over the hump here. Although, I guess now that Victini VMAX on the bench does have 150 HP left, which means a Gale Thrust could be the knockout. But we actually saw last turn when Natalie looked through her deck, there were no basic energy left. So with no Rapid Strike energy in hand, no fighting energy in the deck, will she find a way to be able to attack next turn?
Gustavo eyeing up the Eldegoss here. Maybe we could see a Boss's Orders play potentially, try to stall, make things a little more awkward for Natalie, and Gustavo seems to agree, goes for the Boss's Orders, and looks like it will target down that Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX on the bench. If Gustavo could only attack, he'd be able to close out the game here, but Iron Rule potentially buying Natalie the turn she needs to close this one out.
This is really smart, though. It makes it so Natalie now needs a switch in order to Gale Thrust on that Victini VMAX as well. So Gustavo recognizing what could happen here and just says, okay, I'm going to make it harder for you to win next turn. And sometimes that's all you can do. You just make it a little bit harder for your opponent to win so that maybe you get an extra turn and you get to win.
A pretty solid top deck for Natalie here is that Dedenne GX, and we're going to see she's all in on the win this turn. Boss's Orders brings up the Victini VMAX. Dede change, discarding the hand. We'll be able to draw several prize cards here. Does find the Rapid Strike energy, but still missing the switch, Kyle. Let's see if she can find a switch card here off of the prizes, and there it is. Air Balloon will be able to move this Rapid Strike Urshifu to the bench, and this last prize can be taken here with the Waterfall on Inteleon. You called it out earlier, and we actually end up seeing it.
Yeah, and exactly enough damage here. Exactly enough quick shooting from Inteleon to get this knockout with the Waterfall. This game was played beautifully by Natalie, right down to every last damage counter.
Very well played game by both players, and an extremely close one. Truly came down to those last few turns. It really could have been in either player's court, but Natalie's Iron Rule GX from the Cobalion GX able to really clutch up there in a big way in that game.
Yeah, kicking things off with an amazing first game here in the Invitational. Can't wait to see what's going to happen next in these next couple games, hopefully. But yeah, I think it all goes back to Natalie's amazing first turn. She got everything set up, and then, like you said, that Iron Rule GX helped her close it out at the end. Something you were probably not expecting if you were Gustavo.
Yeah, definitely a kind of an unexpected twist in this game. I mean, this is a closed decklist tournament, so I mean, Gustavo probably was totally taken by surprise if you had to ask me. Let's go ahead and get down to game number 2 here and see what's going to happen. Gustavo being down a game, the pressure's on. You got to win 2 more in order to stay in the winner's bracket. If you lose here, you do get bumped down to the loser's bracket. You're not eliminated from the tournament by any means, but it is always much more difficult to make a run through the loser's bracket as opposed to just winning a few games on the winner's side of things.
Absolutely. And all right, we are going to see Gustavo choose to go first in this second game. And oh no, that is not what you want to see when you're going first. Decent hand when you're going second, but first he's going to need a top deck. Oh, and a quick ball. Not bad.
Yeah. Huge top deck here, can find the Victini V, and with the Viridian Forest in hand, can get that energy attachment for turn, and has the Boss's Orders in hand as well, Kyle. If Gustavo can get a solid top deck, could potentially see, well, it's actually just going to be discarding the Boss's Orders, but with that Escape Rope in hand, still has potential plays to just get a quick knockout on a Pokemon V on Natalie's side.
Yeah, with that top deck of the quick ball, his first turn went from disaster to, oh, this is pretty good. All you need to do with Victini VMAX is get down a Victini V turn 1, put an energy on it, and boom, you're set up for your next turn. Now he's still going to have to draw into Victini VMAX or top deck a Pokemon for his next turn, but I'm sure looking at that opening hand, he's very happy with the card he drew for the turn.
A big time draw indeed. Natalie, having a pretty decent setup, is going to have to put the Dedenne GX down, but really not that big of a deal against Gustavo's deck. I mean, Victini VMAX is very strong against Pokemon V, but the Dedenne GX being a Pokemon GX, it's actually kind of a potential wall against Victini VMAX, and that's a great option to send up to something like an Escape Rope, where it's really difficult for Victini VMAX to deal with a Dedenne GX.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do think the addition of the Galarian Moltres V helps a lot in that kind of situation. You do have an attacker that can easily knock out Dedenne GX, so that's maybe a new layer to this deck. I do think there's a very unfortunate situation here for Gustavo. Starting with that Crobat V against a Rapid Strike Urshifu deck is disastrous because of what's going to happen here. We see the Strafe, it's going to hit for weakness that's 60, and that means Crobat V only has 120 HP left, which later on is going to be bad times when we see that G-Max Rapid Flow.
Yeah, easy 2 prizes later on in the game. Gustavo gonna start things off with the Escape Rope. Natalie did send up that Dedenne GX, trying to wall, I think, against a Victini VMAX, but Gustavo has a way to get around that and will be able to target down a Sobble here. Wants to find a VMAX and an Energy in there. Both of those cards are. Would have really liked to grab a Galarian Moltres here, but there's no Pokemon Search card here in this hand, Kyle.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Obviously, you would have wanted more than this, but Victini VMAX, you know it's not going to get knocked out, so at least you'll get a knockout here. you're in no danger of a return knockout. That's one of the, I guess, only nice things about playing against Rapid Strike Urshifu decks. You know there's not going to be a 300 damage attack out of nowhere, right? They're going to slowly will you down and spread damage to multiple Pokemon, but your VMAX is safe.
Natalie has an excellent hand here. Drizzle's Shady Dealings can grab a trainer card out of the deck, and it looks like Level Ball will be the choice to eye up a Sobble, I would assume, here on the bench, and has Evolution Incense as well to get out that Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, and we'll see Gale Thrust right away, and maybe even a Gmax Rapid Flow if Natalie wants to do it. What do you think about that, Kyle, going with Gmax Rapid Flow versus a just Gale Thrust for 150 here?
I think it depends on whether or not you can get Darkness Energy into the discard pile to power up Moltres for the next turn. If you can, it's easy math, right? You Rapid Flow, hit both Pokemon, and then Victini VMAX only has 190 HP left, which is perfect. So now that Darkness Energy did hit the discard pile, we see the Dire Flame Wings. It means that Natalie can follow up with that Galarian Moltres V, and yeah, I think we're going to see Gmax Rapid Flow.
Oh, well,
and
maybe not this time. Gonna just be the Gale Thrust for 150, the classic. I think they're gonna do this, and then the player does the exact opposite of what the caster predicted.
And I think the reason for that is it does leave you vulnerable to boss's orders, right? If you go for that play and Gustavo goes, okay, I'll boss's orders, your Galarian Moltres, knock it out. And you're like, oh, now I can't knock out Victini VMAX. Whereas this way, you do leave the door open for perhaps another Gale Thrust knockout. So you do have a way to deal with this Victini VMAX.
Yeah, the Rapid Flow would have been pretty tempting to me, but Natalie going with the more conservative route. And as we see, Gustavo did have boss's orders in hand. So if Natalie had gone in with the Gmax Rapid Flow, things could have gotten pretty dicey for her later on in this game. We're going to see Gustavo here go ahead and use this Viridian Forest. Does discard the Victini VMAX, has one more in the deck still, and just eyeing up the fighting energy here. Going to get the attachment, it seems. Just get that card out of the deck, and Quick Ball here can eye up either a Moltres or another Victini V.
Yeah, we'll see what Gustavo grabs here. He is going for Galarian Zapdos V, which we haven't seen yet in this matchup. It does cost one fewer energy for each of your opponent's Pokemon V in play, and here we go. We are going to see this thunderous kick and discarding the Rapid Strike energy. So this could be a big swing in the game.
Yeah, that is a huge play there, and usually Zapdos just kind of here as an answer to the fighting weak Pokemon in the format. Things like Eternatus VMAX really kind of being the big one, but has that great second effect on that attack, being able to discard a special energy, which is huge against decks like Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX that rely so heavily on their Rapid Strike energies. Natalie's going to get things moving here. Go ahead and use Viridian Forest. Does eye up a Dark Energy, and definitely has options here. Has all kinds of different energy in hand to work with.
Yeah, there's a ton of options here. I think Natalie, again, playing this beautifully, understanding that Galarian Moltres V needs to be the follow-up attacker, but if you pile too much energy onto one and it gets knocked out, you won't be able to attack with it. So spreads the energy out, makes it so that Gustavo cannot knock out a Galarian Moltres V and prevent the attack on the next turn. We see Gmax Rapid Flow getting a knockout, setting up Victini VMAX to be finished off by Inteleon later. And wow, just what do you do if you're Gustavo?
Yeah, it seems like Natalie's board is just really scary at this point. Either Moltres can pretty easily attack on the next turn. You've got boss's orders to try to target one of those down, potentially with a max victory, but if you do that, the other one's just ready to go, and this Victini VMAX already has so much damage on it. It's in range of being knocked out right away from a quick shooting, and we're actually going to see a reset stamp here from Gustavo, trying to limit Natalie's hand a little bit more. Natalie did not play a supporter on the last turn, but did play a lot of other very powerful cards. So Gustavo here maybe calling Natalie's bluff a little bit, saying, hey, I bet you've got something great like a boss's orders in hand, which we know Natalie did have.
Yeah, but this is still a winning position for Gustavo. I don't think Natalie can win this turn because she doesn't have access to 2 Inteleon. But we could see that Iron Rule GX come into play again if Natalie is able to find that Cobalion GX once again. You see it's in the deck. That could be the difference maker 2 games in a row if she's able to draw into it.
I would be pretty excited to see that, Kyle. Definitely not something I would have thought to see very much of coming into the tournament this weekend, but seeing it twice in the first set would be pretty great, and has a couple outs to it, just being that quick ball and the Cobalion itself, but also can draw into the Drizzle here to find it. Does find the quick ball, finds the Cobalion, and using that Viridian Forest can get that fighting energy out of the deck. Let's see if that's the route that Natalie wants to go for here.
Yeah, when we were looking at these deck lists, the one thing that stood out was, wow, this is a weird card to put in this deck. But now we see exactly why. We're going to see 2 games in a row. Iron Rule GX just buying 1 turn, and that's going to mean 2 more damage counters, which is exactly enough to close out the game.
Exactly what Natalie needs. And Gustavo here can play cards, but knowing he cannot attack this turn just makes it very difficult for him to find a path into this one. I mean, we see 2 games in a row, just 1 KO away from winning the game, but that Iron Rule GX buying Natalie that 1 turn was such an awesome inclusion in this deck, and it's paying dividends right away here in round number 1.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. If Gustavo could attack, he would just win, right? He would just announce an attack, and the game would be over. But that GX attack, that one-time powerful effect, making your opponent skip 1 attack near the end of the game, you wouldn't think that would be the difference, but hey, players are finding all sorts of creative ways to use this new Inteleon with that quick shooting ability, and sometimes 2 damage counters or 1 damage counter is the difference in a game of the Pokemon trading card game, and we've seen it now 2 games in a row.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, Pokemon have so much more HP than they have had in the past right now in the game, and that the 2 damage counters still make such a big difference and can be the difference between winning and losing a game here. Gustavo going to go ahead and send up this Galarian Moltres, kind of force Natalie to have everything to close the game out. Does have 4 prizes left, but if Natalie can get the quick shooting damage here and go into an attack with the Galarian Moltres, Gustavo can never attack with his own Galarian Moltres.
Yep, I think we do need a boss's orders or an escape rope here, but there is Drizzile, which will allow Natalie to search up the game-winning card. Oof, only 1 boss's orders left, but you can go grab it, and that Galarian Moltres V gonna take down Galarian Zapdos V. And Natalie Millar is going to continue her streak of never losing a game in Players' Cup Finals events. Here we go. 2-0 victory over Gustavo Wada.
Extremely well played. Natalie's deck, honestly, is super cool, Kyle. She played it masterfully, and, going up against, I mean, obviously every player in this event is going to be incredibly accomplished, incredibly strong, but Gustavo, definitely someone who's just been at the top of their game for years and years and years, and Natalie able to get a pretty convincing 2-0 win here in round number 1.
Yeah, both those games were extremely close. You could say Gustavo had maybe some awkward draws in both of those games, but the difference maker in both games was Iron Rule GX, something I did not expect to be seeing.
Definitely. I mean, he's got to say it 2 times, and it really did make all the difference. Just buying that 1 turn, let Natalie get back into the game in a position where otherwise she would have lost going into those final turns. Great game, well played by both players, but I'm ready to get into this next one here, Kyle. We're going to be featuring Diego Casiraga up against Zach Lesage, a bit of a grudge match since Diego was knocked out of Players Cup 2 by Zach Lesage, which Zach did end up winning ultimately. But let's go ahead and get to know Diego, a little bit better.